something Indian. It was an Indian shop. And she brought it to Prabhupada, and when Prabhupada saw it, his eyes widened. He said, Lord Jagannath has come. He paid his obeisances, and he said, you should go right and see if there are some others. There must be 3 altogether. And she found. And then Prabhupada had Shamasundar perform carve the first Jagannath deities. And this was all in the beginning of the movement. One time Prabhupada came into the room where Shamasundar was carving, right? And Jagannath was standing there. On the top of the head of Jagannath, there was a pack of cigarettes, because Shamasundar was smoking, and Prabhupada took the cane and went, just kicked the cigarette pack off the head of Jagannath with his cane. He didn't say anything. There was no commentary. He just went, he made the point. Shamasundar understood. And so the deities were installed on a cart, on a pickup truck, and Jagannath was looking this way, Subhadra was looking this way, or Jagannath this way, Subhadra that way, and Balaram that way. I don't know exactly, but I've seen, there was 4 posts, and there was like a pyramid, a palanquin on top, and large amount of young people followed, large amount of people. It was sensational. And to see such a procession, and people were dancing on the street when this Jagannath cart appeared in great, and Prabhupada was very satisfied. He was smiling. He could see Lord Jagannath had arrived. And then in the follow-up, Jayananda built these gigantic carts, wheels, enormous carts, wheels, and the wheels were made out of not one piece of wood. They were hammered together, planks of wood, and then cut round, enormous. And one of them collapsed. 2 Jagannath cars collapsed in the middle of the procession. The wheel broke down. Then Prabhupada said, he should get pucker wheels. And in this way, Prabhupada introduced, or he practiced his childhood dream to worship Lord Jagannath, now all over the world. First only in his house, then in the neighborhood, and then finally all over the world. And today I was discussing with Prabhu, you see, when I saw Lord Jagannath in the temple, I was shocked. I was a young devotee, and I saw on the altar these 3 little figures. And I asked the Pujari, who's that? He said, that's God. Okay. Okay. It was the most unusual form of God I have ever seen. And so Prabhupada, he didn't care for public taste. It's not exactly, one should think there may be a different way of presenting Krishna to the public in a more user-friendly way than the Jagannath. But Prabhupada never cared for that, and I will read to you something which is really, really sweet that Prabhupada said one time in this regard. And I can give it to you if somebody is interested. You just find the people. People. Give me a second. It's worth it. Here it is. It is very, very beautiful. When Prabhupada was in Pittsburgh on a morning walk, they walked on a bridge, steel bridge, on top of them. And here's what happened. How do I get this bigger? How do I get this bigger? No, I lost it. Bear with me, give me a moment. There. As they walked under a bridge, how do you get that bigger? You saw it? Yes.
Do not open.
Here it is. As they walked under the steel bridge, Prabhupada pointed upwards with his cane and said, look, a sign under the bridge reads unalloyed steel. It's pure steel. It's Pittsburgh is steel manufacturing, one of the number one places in America that make steel. He said unalloyed steel. The bridge was made of unalloyed steel. And Prabhupada said they have unalloyed steel and we have unalloyed devotional service. Prabhupada immediately drew the comparison. Pradyumna asked, what Srila Prabhupada if people don't want to hear our message? This is what Pradyumna asked him. What if people don't want to hear our message? What shall we do? If people don't want to hear our message, which is normal, at least in Western countries. Prabhupada said, here's the point now. The people might not understand our message, but Krishna will be pleased. That is the point. That's the point. Krishna will be pleased. And that is our mission. Right? That is our mission, to please Krishna. They thought Jesus' Christ's mission was stopped. They killed him, but his mission was attained. He preached 3 years only, but so many followers. He pleased Krishna. We must not be disappointed that no one is hearing Krishna consciousness. We will say to the moon, we will say to the stars, we will say to all directions. We will cry in the wilderness because Krishna is everywhere. It's beautiful. He doesn't care what people may or may not. So we will say to the moon, to the stars, to all directions, we will cry in the wilderness because Krishna is everywhere. We want to have a certificate from Krishna that this man has done something for me. Not popularity. Prabhupada never interested in popularity. And I give you an example. If a pack of asses say you're very good, what is the use? Svavitvara hostra kara, this verse, famous verse, people who are hogs, dogs, camels, and asses. They're not interested. So if a pack of asses say you're very good, what is the use? You have to please Krishna with purified senses. So I give you an example that I personally witnessed. When Prabhupada came to Amsterdam, there was a sannyas initiation of Akhoyananda Prabhu, then Akhoyananda Maharaj. And at the same time, Jagannath was installed. So it fits into this setting. Jagannath was installed. And so Prabhupada came into the temple room, a lot of people there, television was there, and he sat down and he saw the Havan and he said, where are the flowers? Where are the flowers? Why are there no flowers? Why are there no flowers? Who's responsible for that? And Prabhupada, the television. And I don't care for the television. I care whether Krishna has flowers or not. That's what I'm concerned with. So he screamed he looked at the television team. He said, I don't care for the television. For them, that's a shock, I think everybody smiles to the television. I don't care for the television. I care that Krishna has no flowers. Somebody should get. And they would get flowers, and everybody was very humble, but Prabhupada was very loud, very loud. I've seen Prabhupada becoming extremely angry. It was within seconds. His anger deflated. The anger was not based on envy, like in our case, or on lust, that we can't get something. His anger was simply to make a point. I remember one time that there was a notion to move out of the temple. We had a beautiful temple that Prabhupada liked very much. And we had to go there and present to Prabhupada this plan. And Prabhupada listened to this plan. He had been there, the castle. He has visited, he liked the place. So then he heard, it was for rent at that time. He said we wanted to move. And Prabhupada was very disturbed. He said, what are the arguments? And he heard all the arguments. I was never satisfied. Why you want to move? And then Prabhupada became very silent. And then he all of a sudden said, fasten your seatbelts. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be very loud. He said, and even if your child has been born deaf and blind, your child is born deaf and blind, cannot hear anything, blind. I cannot scream as loud as Prabhupada screamed. Does that mean you kill it? You could hear 250 yards easily. Does it mean? And again he screamed. And his lips were trembling. You ask anybody who saw Prabhupada becoming angry, his lips would tremble, It was blue in his face. Again, doesn't mean you kill it. And then he became very peaceful and said, don't kill it. Develop it. Develop it. Don't kill it. Don't become rolling stones, a stone that rolls in a river from one. He said, don't become rolling stones. Set moss on, like a stone that sits there, gathers moss, green moss, So I've seen this. There's a couple of examples I went through with Prabhupada in anger. And the astounding thing was from one moment to another, he became angry, not for himself, like this issue with the flowers. It was not about himself, and he didn't get a garland that was nice enough or something. No, it was about Krishna. For Krishna, Prabhupada could be angry, like anything. And then within a second, he was peaceful. Because his anger was not based on lust and anger and greed. It was for Krishna. For Krishna. He could be very angry. And when one time the Naxalites in Calcutta, the communists, there was a program, and Prabhupada was singing Jaya Radha Madhava, and he saw through the side of his eyes. He saw that two Naxalites were trying to pull down a devotee from the stage. He jumped up and he swung his cartels, and smashed the guy on the head. The guy was bleeding. I mean, Prabhupada really hit him hard, Oh, sorry. They retreated, He became so like a lion, from one moment to another. He could become like a lion, Not normally. Normally, Prabhupada was amazingly peaceful. You felt the peace whenever you go in this room. It was like entering a space. I always had the impression I walk into some other space, some space capsule or something. Very, very peaceful. You're completely relaxed when you came in this room. There was no anxiety anymore. Before you were little, what would Prabhupada say, but he put everybody at ease. Everybody. There are many examples. I could tell you many examples more, but I want to get back to the actual subject. That he even appeased my Christian father-in-law, who was out of his mind. that his daughter was married to a Hare Krishna devotee 3 days after she moved into the temple. He was out of his mind. He went to Prabhupada, he went into his room like this. He said, Prabhupada, I need to talk to you. And Prabhupada had some professors there. You know, he said, all right, sit down, be comfortable, Professor. And then Prabhupada explained to him, the man was trembling in anger. He was a born-again Christian, it means fundamentalist. And his daughter is getting married to a pagan Hare Krishna. One day she calls his father up that I moved into the temple, and that was already too much. And 3 days later I'm getting married. You know, it's a whole story. I mean, it was not exactly what should have been done, nor was it a good idea. But so Prabhupada talked to this man for 2 hours. It's in the conversations. And he explained to him the Hare Krishna movement. Men ask questions. How do you run this movement? He was a businessman. And by the end of the talk, he told me, I met your man. He's one of the finest men I ever met in my life. And then he went in his car to Philadelphia, 8 hours, to see Prabhupada next weekend on a Rath Yatra, and he filmed it. He was fascinated by Prabhupada. And as long as he was alive, he was telling me every time I would see him, I know Prabhupada. You don't. You met him sometimes. I have the best idea. I talked with him for hours, you know. So this was Prabhupada. Just to give you an idea that he could turn around people who were really, really angry, you know. You can imagine an Indian father, you know, a boy gets married to a Muslim family and after 3 days. And anyway, so you see Prabhupada, he was important to understand that he said, we are not concerned with public, you know. We don't try to please the public. Because the public is changing. It's changing. Today they hate you, tomorrow they love you. You know, public is always changing because they're on a mental platform. If somebody joins the temple, young bhakta, in the beginning, right? Shall I not? He's on the mental platform. Automatically, it takes some time till his mind cools down, you know. And so Prabhupada never was concerned with the public, and I've seen this many times, you know, that he was concerned with one thing, that Krishna be pleased. That's the main thing. You know, this was his life, up to the end. You know, up to the very end of his life. Last thing Prabhupada said was, Hare Krishna. And that was it. He didn't come to the Na. I was right there. He only went to Krish, and it was already gone. You know, very amazing way how Prabhupada left his body. And so his dream was, in the beginning, to have Rath Yatra, and as time went on, he went to America, and everything happened to him. He was astounded how so many people gathered around him when he started to sing in Thompson Square, and started to ask him questions. And in the beginning, they didn't know. When there was one shower room in the first temple, and Prabhupada stood in line. He stood in line. There was a line there. He went to the end of the line. He didn't push himself now, not at all. And somebody thought that was odd. Krishna told somebody, this is odd, you know, you have to he's your guru. And so gradually people understood how to deal with Prabhupada, you know. They were coming for the Sunday feast. Prabhupada cooked 22 preparations in 2 hours, Prabhupada, for everybody. He served everybody. Everybody. And then everybody left. Nobody stayed back. And Prabhupada cleaned all the pots. Never complained. Since somebody thought, oh, this is very strange, we should help him. And so gradually, people picked up. You know, this is the West means, in one sentence, don't respect anyone or anything. No respect. Somebody else's religion, somebody else's philosophy, somebody else's culture, all bad. This is a Western mentality. No respect, no respect for animals, no respect for trees, no respect for nature, no respect. That's the Western, the Rajaguna, Tamaguna, demonic nature. And so Prabhupada suffered. He was living in a room and with one boy who was taking LSD in the fridge. Prabhupada saw it. He would take. And then he became so crazy that he took a kitchen knife and was running after Prabhupada, and Prabhupada ran down the staircase. This guy with a kitchen knife behind him. Can you imagine that? Can't get worse, But Krishna saved him, and through many calamities, Prabhupada, ultimately, he showed that he was Krishna Shakti Vinyanata Pravatana, that he was supremely empowered like nobody on the planet at his time. Nobody on the planet would come close to it. And Prabhupada had many godbrothers, all very venerable people. Nobody came close to Prabhupada's. And people recognized when he went to Tirupati, when they realized that this was Prabhupada, they closed the whole temple for a whole day. They said, Swami, whole temple we close for you, the temple, that you can have darshan to your fullest heart's desire. They could understand. Many people from the Madhvacharya Mat also. All the time you hear somebody of these big people speaking up about Prabhupada, he was the one who actually carried the message all over the world. And we are all in this fortunate position that we are serving him. That's why you see this. We have one, although there are many gurus, many disciples, now there's one Guru Puja, because he's Acharya, founder Acharya. Like if you go into Madhvacharya's place in Udupi, there's one room, a site where his seat is, and everybody goes there for Guru Puja. It's one seat, silver seat, Madhvacharya. You can see it. You can go walk right into it. It's the darshan room. And so he created these books, and he told us that they're actually dictated by Krishna. They're dictated by Krishna. He created these books. And they have changed us all. Nobody of us, I had never had a problem with Prabhupada's books. Whatever I read, I accepted it because Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir, that is a verse. One who has unflinching faith in Guru and Krishna, all the Vedas become automatically revealed. You see, so we have to see Prabhupada's position and how, by his desire, Lord Jagannath went all over the world. And now we have Rath Yatra in so many different places. Lord Jagannath is glorified. What a victory, after going through the trauma in India of British occupation for hundreds of years, where India was considered to be barbarian. At least they tried to make it out like that. In the middle of London, of all places, and in Trafalgar Square, which is a place where the Battle of Trafalgar, Nelson, is worshipped, practically speaking. The whole traffic goes around Nelson column, and Rath Yatra, Lord Chaitanya's, the Rath carts appear, and it is such a victory. And Prabhupada, he was trembling in happiness when he saw that on the middle of Trafalgar Square. He could not imagine in his youth that this is going to happen. In his old age, that Lord Jagannath would appear. And so, from there we can learn that with Krishna we can do anything. Like Arjuna, with Krishna he can do anything. And it is true. Also my experience. That with Krishna everything is possible. I wonder one time, some company dropped a 40-foot container of Bhagavad Gitas in front of our house, in the middle of the street, in the middle, on the side. And it was blummed. There was a blump and a seal on it. I had to go to custom officer. And custom officers in Germany, they're like this. There's no argument. It's clearly stated, you have to pay. And so I went. And I pleaded with the officer. I was in a suit, a nice tie, acceptable, Samsonite suitcase. And I pleaded with him. I said, you can do it. Just give it for us for free. Do something for God in your life. And he said, well, I can't. I said, don't look at it. Just let me guide your hand. Hold the stamp, And so he said, all right. He made the stamp like that, While he looked away. And he released, inconceivable, we would have paid thousands of dollars. He released it. And then when I went out, he said, I have one question. There's something dangling out of your suit. Piece of cloth. Open. He said, what is the meaning of that? What is the meaning of that piece of cloth that dangles out of your suit, When spreading Krishna consciousness, you go through all kinds of incredible situations. This is one of them. So you see, with Prabhupada's mercy, this was possible. The impossible became possible. That he would relieve a German custom officer would look away while I stamp his document, practically speaking, to take the books away. This is Prabhupada. Because he had Krishna, and with Krishna, Arjuna could do anything. And after Krishna had left, he was arrested by some farm boys, by some villagers. And he said, it is the same Gandiva, I'm the same Arjuna, but I don't have the power. It's a fact, like I explained before, without Krishna you cannot even lift your hand. Not possible. You remember when I talked about this. Not even lift your hand. You cannot speak a word. And he can take everything away from one moment to another. I saw when we made our leaving certificate, everybody of us had to give a speech. Parents were there, teachers were there. And I was staying in the oldest class, you had only one guy staying with you in a room. And he was, his nature was, the guys who sit in the first class of the classroom, every time the teacher says something, they're the most hated people in the rest of the class. I was in the back. I was one of the bad boys. And so I had to stay with him, and the guy was a pain for me, he was a pain. And so he studied his lecture that he would give in front of a mirror, rehearsing his facial expressions for the great moment that he would speak. So, he spoke. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a great day where ladies and gentlemen, this is a great day. He lost it. Krishna would not allow it. He started 3 times his lecture. Krishna would not allow him to remember because he was so puffed up. And then he walked back and he fell from the platform, and he took seat beside me. He said, I didn't know you have such a sense of humor. It was excellent, It was the worst thing you could tell him, Wonderful. I didn't know you have such a sense of humor. Congratulations, While he was in pain, So you see, Krishna can just, from one moment to another, you can become a speaker or you can become a mumbling fool. From one moment to another. It's all up to Krishna. By the grace of Krishna, Guru and Krishna, a lame man can cross over a mountain, a blind man can see this, a foolish man can become a great speaker, and a blind man can see the stars in the sky. That is a verse. Karoti Vachalam something. Mukam Karoti Vachalam, right, From one moment to another, Krishna can empower people. And I've seen the God brother of mine doing the most amazing things, which is not in their power really to do. They were able to do that, the most amazing things, simply because of having taken shelter at the lotus feet of Prabhupada. Sorry that I got away from what I wanted to actually talk about, but this is the nature of transcendental subject matters. So we're talking now about Lord Jagannath, and the amazing things I never knew, that we have near our temple in Mayapur, there's Rajapur, the temple of Jagannath. Very beautiful deities. When I told Prabhu, when I showed it to my little son, he was only 4 years old, he said, "Daddy, they are so cheerful." The deities, he says, "This Jagannath is so cheerful." And so, that Jagannath temple is described in Sri Navadvip Dham Mahatmya, long time ago. And it says there, by Bhakti Thakur, that in the 17th century there appeared one demonic king in Orissa named Rakta Bahu, who desecrated temples and terrorized the heart of the pious. The devotees of Jagannath Puri became afraid of the king's evil intention, and they took shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord. That night, the master of Lilachala, Lord Jagannath himself, appeared in the dream of the head priest and assured him that no one in the entire creation could harm his divine form or his temple. Just by his mere will, he could keep the miscreants away from the place. Hence the priest need not to be worried yet the Lord wished to reciprocate with the feelings of his devotees and to increase their love for him. He asked the priest to inform all the devotees to remove the deities from Lord Jagannath, Baladev and Maharani next morning and carry them to Bengal. So actually Lord Jagannath left Orissa and went to Bengal. I never heard that before. It's an interesting story. The Lord also informed the priest that the deity should be carried, taking the path through the jungle. The main road should be avoided as Rakta Bahu was on his way taking that road. So they carried him actually there. Upon hearing this, the Sabara devotees who served by carrying the Lord during the various festivals like Ras Yatra immediately started making preparations for the Lord to his journey. The Lord traveled through the day before the night set in. On their way, they offered their Lordship whatever fruit, flowers, and leaves they could obtain in the forest. They journeyed like this for 12 continuous days before they reached Srimanta Dweep that night. The Lord appeared in the dream of the Sabara leader and expressed his desire to settle down on that place. Understanding the Lord's will, the Sabara devotees made appropriate arrangements for the Lord to be established as the village of Rajapur. That's where he went. From Jagannath, actually Lord Jagannath, I don't think anybody heard the story. I've not heard that before either. I found this in the treasures of Gaudiya, of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas of Bengal. According to Bhakti Thakur, he settled in Rajapur. Now comes the next step. About 500 years ago, during the time of Lord Chaitanya, there lived a great devotee there named Jagadish Ganguly. He resided in a small village near the present-day Mayapur, namely in Rajapur. He would travel by foot 900 kilometers every year to take darshan of Lord Jagannath and his beloved Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra at Puri. He would stay for 4 months participating in Rath Yatra festival and then returned home to Bengal. This was a schedule every year. Then, one day, his happiness was ruined. He contracted a serious disease that left him completely blind. His friends considered it would be too dangerous to carry the blind man along to a place as distant as Puri. Hence, Jagannath was left with no option but to stay in Navadvip and to live in constant lamentation and separated from his beloved Lord. That's the story now. This is the second act to the first act that Jagannath left Puri. He came to Rajapur. Some Brahmana in Rajapur became blind, couldn't go to Jagannath Puri, and lived in constant lamentation. One day, Jagannath appeared in his dream and informed him that the next morning, while bathing in the Ganga, a log of wood would touch his head. By the mercy of this wood, Jagannath would regain his vision. The merciful Lord told Jagannath, Jagadish, he should then take this wood to a nearby village where there was a devotee carpenter to live. The Lord explained that his wish, that this carpenter would carve the blissful forms out of wood. Lord explained that the carpenter would initially refuse because his hands were destroyed by leprosy. He had no fingers. And once he was carving, so the carpenter, he was so upset that the Brahmana asked him, he said, how dare you to insult me? Don't you see my hands? Don't you see I have no fingers? My whole fingers are taken away by leprosy. How can you ask me? You're making fun out of me? You're ridiculing me? I said, no, Jagannath told me. So he convinced the carpenter, they fixed to his stump of fingers, this fixed chisel. And on the other side, with ropes, they fixed a hammer. And he would hammer, he would cry in pain. Cry in pain. The puj, it's called pas in Orissa. That's why one should not say Guru Puj. We should say Guru Puja. Puj. The puj was running down his arms in blood, And the amazing thing is, the more he carved, the more his hands became restored. And the last day, his fingers were back. You see how simply by devotional service, although painfully performed, before seriously performed this service, he was completely restored to his original beauty. Krishna can do anything. This verse in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Machita, if you direct your consciousness towards me, Machita, Sarva Durgani, all the difficulties that come from Durga. Durga is riding on a tiger, right? Not a tiger. And she has a trident. The trident stands for the three sufferings, Tapatraya. There's Adhyatmik, Adhibodhik, Adhidevik. If you drive down a car down the street, you fall asleep and you run into a tree, that's Adhyatmik. You drive down the same road, all of a sudden some farmer comes with his tractor, and you drive into the tractor, Adhibodhika. You drive down exactly the same road, there's ice on the street, Adhidevika. So every accident in the world, you can break down in one of the three factors. Somebody drives too fast, Adhibodhika. The three sufferings. And so he says, Machita, Krishna says, Machita, if you direct your consciousness to me, Machita, Sarva Durgani, all the difficulties of material life, Mat Prasadam, by my mercy, Tarishyasi, destroyed. All difficulties. Simply by taking shelter in Krishna. Everything is possible. All the difficulties become destroyed. It says it right in Bhagavad Gita. So with Krishna, Prabhupada gave the example, he could perform superhuman tasks. superhuman tasks, by Krishna. Sometimes one of our devotees, woman, somewhere in the Caribbean, her child played ball in the front yard, and the ball rolled on the street, and a car drove over her. And the mother saw it, and she picked up the car with her own hands, like this, and somebody pulled the kid from underneath the car away. I mean, after that, she couldn't even lift her shopping bag, the same woman. So by Krishna, anything is possible. She was so in anxiety, in pain for that he just picked up the car like this. It's unreal, what Krishna can do. How Krishna can empower people from one moment to another when necessary. And so this man, his hands were gone. Same as Vasudeva Datta, he was leprosy. He had leprosy. And from one moment to another, Lord Krishna restored him to his original body, perfect body. So it is better to fix our mind on Krishna and depend on Krishna than on anything else. Everything, we have to do our work. It's not that we just say, well, Krishna maintain me. We have to do our work, and then Krishna will help us. We have to do our best, and Krishna does the rest. This is a good formula. We have to do our best, then Krishna will do the rest. That's the mechanism, the technology. One time Satsuru Maharaj, he, in his temple, he was temple president in Boston, and so they had no money. So he took all the money, bought all the flowers he could afford, and decorated the altar very gorgeously, and sent a picture to Prabhupada. He said, now we depend on Krishna. Prabhupada called him and said, what does it mean? Depend on Krishna. He said, yes. We took all the money, decorated the altar, said, now Krishna, you have to take care of us. And Prabhupada wrote back, he said, the idea to depend on Krishna is very nice, but you have to do the work. Then Krishna will help you. You see? Like Prabhupada, can you save me? Yes, but you have to do the work. So we have to, it's cooperation between Krishna and the living entity. Everything is based on this cooperation. You have to do your best, Krishna will do the rest. So in this way, coming back to the story, this man was completely restored. And so then as time goes on, the deity worship was neglected. And people worship the Lord first every day, then one time a week, then one time a month, and then they forgot it completely. And a huge plague came and killed everybody. The whole village was destroyed. Just like this Karuna virus you have right now. It is actually Karuna virus. It's actually sent by Krishna, It's one way to chastise people is by war, another one is by epidemics. It's definitely Krishna's will. And so the whole village was destroyed. So then one day, centuries passed, and somebody passed by this ruined temple, which was an old temple, and it was infested with snakes. So nobody went there. There was a termit, big termit. And out of this termit, there was a voice. Please get me out of here. And you see, Jagannath is made out of wood. And somebody digged and deities came out, completely unharmed, in perfect shape, although living in a termit hill, because Krishna can do anything. And they started the worship again. And they were worshipped for a while. And then the last pujari, he had no successor. And he couldn't continue. In 1979, his name was Patik Chatterjee. He could not continue the worship much longer. And so then one night he had a dream. And he saw the deities were running over the rice field, Lord Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra. And he said, "Where are you going?" He said, "We're going to Krishna, ISKCON, Chandradoya." "Why?" "Because they're going to feed us. We need some food, we are starving, you know." And so then he went and told Jayapataka Swami. And Jayapataka Swami immediately went to this place and said, "We will manage this." And it became the famous Jagannath temple in Rajapur, not far away from Chandradoya Mandir, maybe 10 kilometers. And these deities are extremely beautiful. And let's see, I can show you a picture here. There they are. Let me see how I do this. I got it. 1 second. Be patient. So, I don't know how to do this. I have to just show you like this. You can see it on the internet, right? These are the deities. They're very beautiful deities. And 3 years ago, because the area is completely Muslim area, very few Vaishnavas, one Muslim boy, Pancha Jangri, told the story, or Jananivas. I don't know who is who. So, when I would talk to them, I said, "Who of the two I'm talking to you right now?" You know, I never could figure it out. You know, and so anyway, he or they or whoever of the two said that a Muslim boy came and he approached Subhadra. He climbed on the altar and he removed a pearl in her nose. And then all of a sudden he saw out of Balaram's stump, a hand came down and slapped him so much that he fell out of the temple. This is 20 yards. It was such a heavy blow. And he was lying outside and screaming. His mother came and picked him up. He had all 5 fingers in his face. See? Lord Balaram. And I have to admit, when I heard the story, I said, next time I go there, I want to try that one. I want to be beaten by Balaram, you know. So you see how Krishna can do anything. He stands on the altar since hundreds of years, you know, but all of a sudden he can just take the hand and slap you, you know. So this, by the mercy of Krishna, everything is possible. And the more we hear stories like this about Prabhupada and about the Lord, the more our faith is increasing in the Krishna conscious movement. These are faith-making stories. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premananda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare 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 Ram. I thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. I enjoy every bit of it. I learned to know the nicest people I ever met in my life. and keep on going, practicing Krishna consciousness. Soon this huge temple will rise and you have a life. And all the people who live around, all the householders, they have a life. They have something to do for the rest of their life. This is Krishna's mercy. And there's a story, the last story before I go. There was a village where all the dogs died. Did I tell that story? No. All the dogs died in somewhere in India. And 12 o'clock it was. All the dogs fell over, died. And the people went to the Guru. The Guru was living in a tree house. They said, Maharaj, all the dogs died. What does that mean? He said, let me think about that. He went into his little hut, tree house, came out after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, he said, Krishna's mercy. Krishna's mercy, you know. People started wondering whether he is getting too old. Right? Next week, exactly the same time, all the birds died. Birds fell, the crows fell out of a tree, dead. They died in mid-flight, having a heart attack or whatever. Crows, you know, and birds. The place was littered with birds. They went to the Guru and said, Guru Maharaj, please, dispel our doubt. Last week, all the dogs died, now all the birds died. What does it mean? He went inside. Let me think about it. He went inside, he came out and said, this is Krishna's mercy. So by that time, you know, the crowd split into two people. One trying to climb up to get the Guru out of the tree. Others said, you can't do that, he's a Guru. And they started arguing with each other. It was a big fight broke out, you know. Next week, same time, all of a sudden, all the fires went out. And this is in a village, medieval village. Fire goes on since hundreds of years. Somebody always has fire. Once the fire is gone, then they have to go to another village. You know, so all the fires snuffed out by some invisible force. He was cooking all the time, fire was gone. They went to the Guru and said, Guru Maharaj, please, dispel our doubt. And he said, yes, let me think about it. He came out, he said, it's Krishna's mercy. So then a war broke out between these two parties. They tried to pull him down from the thing and they're beating each other. And huge melee of aggression and beating and pulling each other on the ground, each other. And it was a war, you know. And the Guru went into his house and said, also Krishna's mercy. Next week, same time, 12 o'clock, the Muslims appeared. They had destroyed all the villages, burned the villages, children were driven away, killed even, women were raped. It was horrible. They came to this village. Commander-in-Chief said, stop. This is strange. What is strange, Maharaj? He said, look again. We don't see anything, but that's the problem. There's no birds, no dogs barking, not even fire comes out of the houses. Is this a trap? And they ran away. And the villagers came and said, this is the only village that was saved. How is it possible, Guru Maharaj? He said, let me think about it. And then he came out of his hell and said, I told you. It is Krishna's mercy. You know, so sometimes, you know, we don't understand, but in the long run we can understand. You know, how everything is Krishna's mercy. There's a reason for it. A higher reason that we cannot penetrate in our small, little human minds. That's why Bhishma said in Shanti Parva, I think, of Mahabharata, nobody can understand the plan of the Lord. Even great souls are bewildered. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Gauranga ki jai, Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki jai, Lord Nrsingadev ki jai, Go Premananda Hari Bol. Thank you very much.